Almost missed my little mute button there. Okay, we are going to get started. And again, I want to welcome you to this training. And I truly appreciate the time that you are taking out of your day to be here. I know that you have a lot going on. And so please know that I recognize that and do truly appreciate it. I'm Lisa Karth. I'm with FEI Systems, and I'm going to be taking you through today's training. With me behind the scenes, I have Jacqueline Horning. I refer to her as Jack, and she's here to support us on any technical difficulties that might come up. Leslie, would you like to take a moment to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Lisa. I'm pretty sure everybody on the call is fully aware of who I am. But just in case somebody's not met me yet, I'm Leslie Miska. I'm the Information Services Manager at the Office of Aging and Disability Services. I am the project manager on the Evergreen project, and I oversee our electronic data systems. And I am here to support Lisa through this training. I'll have the Q&A open. So if you have questions, you can type those into the Q&A and I'll respond to those throughout the training session. I would like to point out that this is a high-level technical training. Lisa's going to show you how to navigate through the system, find these different forms, possibly create them, edit them, some of that sort of technical training. We do have an additional training session planned in January for this group, where we'll dive in a little bit deeper on the business process and some of those types of questions. However, if you have those questions today, please feel free to pop them into the Q&A. I'll try to respond. If I can't, I'll work with Emily and Liz Hardink to get some answers to those before our business process training.
Okay, great. Thank you, Leslie. Let me tell you about our time together. First, I want to introduce you to Evergreen, give you a high-level sense of what the system is about and what you can expect from it. We're going to talk about workflows throughout our time together, and we're going to go into the person-centered plan. And the person-centered plan, I'm going to give you a lot more information than you necessarily want or need. And actually, for me to say want was actually not a good thing to say. The background I'm giving you is so that you understand what's happening when the PCP gets to you, what you will do with it, and then what happens afterwards. Just in case you get questions, I think it's always a good thing for somebody who is a reviewer, such as you all are, to have an understanding of what comes before and what comes afterwards. We're going to talk about the classification, reclassification packet. And I know that these are a new term for you. The packet is a new term. And it's basically, I'm going to show you how forms are bundled up to make it easy for you to review some of them. We're going to then talk about the prior authorizations, and I love your prior authorizations. There's so much automation in there. It's fabulous. We're going to end up our time together, wrap it up by discussing the next steps. You have available to you microlearning. So if you haven't watched these, I highly encourage you to do so. There is the search microlearning, which introduces you to Evergreen, and of course, shows you how to search. There is the user dashboard and person dashboards, and the user dashboard is called My Dashboard. There's then the person record, and this is where all the person's demographic and personal information is stored. It's collected and stored there. There's a health information section, and it's the same thing. It's where the health information is collected and stored so that multiple people have access to it. Queries and notifications are very helpful. The queries are filters to help you organize your work. The notifications let you know if there is something you have to take action on, or if there's a change in a status for something. There's one for forms, letters, and progress notes. There's lots of consistency between those items, but that's where you're doing a lot of what I'll call in the moment work for the person. Capturing information on case notes, adding and editing forms, and then also working with letters. And lastly, there's attachments. This gives you a great overview of what they are and the different places you might add an attachment. Now, also, these are available at any time, so don't hesitate to rewatch them. This is a listen-only demonstration, and so you are going to have questions. I can just about guarantee it. And so that's why on your Zoom toolbar, you have this little Q&A icon. And if you click on this, you're going to be able to input your question. And once you hit send, it's going to go back to Leslie and Jack. Now, the other thing that we have is the chat icon. And Jack has already leveraged that. She uses this to send you links and has sent you the link for the micro learnings. So you have it there if you need it. Now, when we talk about Evergreen, it's helpful to know that there are two sides to Evergreen. Think of it as an umbrella. And under one section is the person record. And this is where we're spending our time today. The other side is Adult Protective Services, or APS reports. Now, when you hear somebody say Evergreen, they are referring to this person record, where the case management actions occur. If someone is referring to Adult Protective Services, they will refer to it as APS reports or APS. So Evergreen's doing a lot of different things for you. So there's a lot of great things that come out of Evergreen or that are part of Evergreen. And these are what I call oohs and ahs, because they're items that help make your work life easier. So for example, person records are created from and linked to MIMS data. This means your financial eligibility displays on that person record, and classification data flows into MIMS and back into Evergreen after it's been entered into MIMS. All of this displays on the person record. The classification packet bundles forms. So when you're reviewing things, there's no need to go searching in a whole bunch of different places. It is right there in one place for you. You're going to hear me reference notifications throughout this afternoon. Evergreen has alerts built into it, so you know when something is waiting for you to take action on it. There's no guessing. You don't need to keep a separate calendar or anything like that. Evergreen does all of that tracking for you. These packets I mentioned, once it's submitted for review, or excuse me, I'm mixing things up here a little bit. The main care waiver organizations, these are created from and linked to MIMS data. ODES Information Services team, they are going to have the ability to add and edit services within Evergreen, so they don't have to wait for FEI to do it. It's much more instantaneous. Your prior authorizations, known as PAs, will use the MIMS rate table instead of Evergreen for doing the pricing. And this is going to make your rate changes a much smoother process. Now, the prior authorization form is going to capture the requested units versus the authorized units. Expanded prior authorizations will appear as separate lines, just as they do in MIMS. And this will allow you to send a request. In addition to this, you'll be allowed to send a request for clarification to the case manager. So something, you're reviewing it and it doesn't quite make sense to you, you can go back to the case manager and ask for a clarification. So there's the life cycle of managed care. No, and the reason we're showing you this is Evergreen covers all of this. You know, the person reaches out and says, hey, like I'd like to receive services or see about receiving services. And of course, I said the person does this. This might be a family member as well. They go through the intake process, and should they be deemed to move forward in the process, there is the assessment, and then the reassessment, which occurs annually or if there's a change that warrants it. From there, we go into the individual support planning. How are we going to make sure this person lives their best possible life? And part of that is the prior authorization, also known as the service authorization. Well, once all of that's in play, the person is at a point that they are going to start receiving services. And of course, the provider is going to want payment. Well, that provider is going to submit their claims through their regular process. But once it gets paid by MIMS, that utilization information flows into Evergreen and it's tracked in the prior authorization. There's also then at some point, the individual is not going to receive services any longer. Perhaps they passed away, they've moved out of the state, or they just don't need the services. In that instance, we move into the case closure. Now, the reporting, this is on one little spoke here, but actually this applies throughout the whole thing. There is all sorts of reporting available in Evergreen. It's a one-stop shop for you. It's helpful to know how Evergreen is organized as you work in it. So at the very top, we have the organization. And the organization is who you work for. For your external users, it's Maine Care and other contracted providers, such as Disability Rights Maine. It's essentially the parent or the top level agency. For internal users, it's ODES and other state staff. Within the organization, there is the location, and this is where you physically work. And it's a location under the organization, and perhaps you actually work at that location, or you're dispatched from or conduct work under that location. Some of us are still working remotely. For state staff, it's your district or central office. We then come down to the staff. This is you. This is the system user. And our staff, in many cases, is assigned to one or more locations. And in addition to that, the staff member is assigned to the person. Now, the person, you've heard me use that term. This is what you know as the client or member. Moving forward, I'm going to be using the term person. And this is the individual needing services and supports. Now, when I said that there is a staff member assigned to the person, this typically occurs with case managers and providers. Now, our focus today is on the person. I want to talk about accessing Evergreen. You have to log into the system. It's the same as if you log into any other system. You need your URL or your web address. You need your username and your password. And so you input your username as well as your password. Now, if you can see this screenshot here, it says username or email. It's a username you're entering. Email is not going to work. Well, once you click login, you then get this acknowledgement screen. So you're basically going to click to say you are indeed an authorized user of the system. There's also, should you need it, this little forgot password link. And when you click on this, again, like you've done so many other times, like I had to do Tuesday when I tried to order something for Target, clicked forget password, I input my email address, you're going to do the same. You're going to get an email back that tells you what you need to do to reset your password. Okay. Now then, a little public service announcement here. The sandbox, that's the training environment. This is an environment you're going to have the opportunity to play in. So you can go in and touch the system and try different things. When using the sandbox, please, 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 please do not change the password. Do not click that forgot password button or link. And the reason for that is we have a lot of people using the same login and the same password. So if you go to change it, you're going to be blocking everyone else from getting into the system. Well, if that happens, Leslie's going to start getting a lot of phone calls and in turn is going to say, Lisa, we're having an issue here. I'm going to go in and I'm going to reset the password. So just please don't use that button while playing in the sandbox. Okay. Now then, you've acknowledged you're an authorized user. If you work for multiple organizations and or locations, you're going to see what we call a context screen. And this is where you identify for Evergreen what organization you're working under and what location. So at that point, you'd select the organization and from there select the location. Now, Evergreen does a lot of narrowing down of things for you. So once you've selected your organization, when it comes to locations, it's only going to allow you to select a location that's aligned with the organization. Evergreen has a lot of guardrails in there to help make sure you can do things correctly the first time. Now, you also have to select the staff member you're working as, and you're typically going to choose self. The reason that is that there are times people go on vacation or they go on leave, and somebody else has to cover their work. Let's say Jack is going on vacation for a month. Well, somebody has to cover her work. So in that instance, I'm delegated to cover her work. So when I log in, if I'm working as her, I would select her name. It's very rare that happens, but I wanted you to understand why that selection is there. And once you log in, this is your home page. And front and center in this is your dashboard. And your dashboard is made up of various tiles here. And again, you have a micro learning that tells you all about that. So I'm not going to spend any time on it. I do want to point out, though, that your Evergreen logo in this upper left corner, you use this to return to the screen at any time. You also have this white bar at the very top. This is what you'll hear me refer to as a navigation header. You would have also heard that term in your micro learnings. It's possible you also heard it referred to as the top level persistent menu. Well, when you hear that, what we mean is this top white bar, the navigational header. Now, to the immediate right of that Evergreen logo is the search function. And there is a drop down next to this so that you can search on various categories of information. Now, Evergreen is role-based access. meaning that you have access to only the information and the selections you need to do your job. So some of you will not have all of these items listed, and that's okay. That's the way it's supposed to be. But you do, when you're doing a search, have to make the correct selection. And so if you are ever doing a search for a staff member and don't get the results you're looking for, make sure your category is correct, because I guarantee there's a chance that you miss that. And that's why I'm chuckling, because even today, I still miss changing that. So don't forget to check that out. But once you have your category selected, you're then going to type in the person's name. We're just going to stick with person for now and press enter. And you will get the results. The record is here. And so you click on it to access the person record. Now, within the sandbox, you are going to be assigned persons to work with. And we do this so you can practice, and each staff member is assigned a different person. Well, these person names are all very similar. And the first name is always the name of the course. For you all, we shortened it to service authorization. The last name in this instance is person 2. So you are going to, when searching for your person, to the right of the search persons field where you input the name, there's an icon that's a magnifying glass with a plus sign in it. Click on that. That brings you to advanced search. And in the first name, you're going to type in service authorization. And in the last name, you're going to type in person and whatever number you were assigned. And then click search. That's going to bring you to the results. Now, there may be instances there's more than one result. For example, here, there's a person 2, but there's also person 20. Because that person 2 met that criteria. The 0 on it, the end of it, wasn't enough to separate it. So if you need to, get things in numerical order, you would just click on this arrow to the right of the column name. And that's going to put things in numerical order for you, or for the most part. We had done our search for a person, we had clicked enter, and we opened up the person record. And here I'm in the person dashboard. And you can see the title of the screen is person dashboard. Like your dashboard, it has tiles on it. All of the information in these tiles is specific to the person, that particular person. In this case, Ruby Jazz. You have up here the top ribbon or banner that tells what person you're in. Well, there's a lot of time where you're going to spend a lot of space is the forms icon, which is in your left navigation menu. So you're going to see we go there a lot today. Now, when I reference the person record, I'm speaking of this whole, oops, I jumped ahead a little bit. I'm referring to this whole thing. Everything you can access from here is the person record. Well, there's also, you can see at the very top, half of it, but there is a record icon. And this has the person demographic information. And so when I refer to the record, I'm referring to this overarching record. If I am referring to information in this icon, I will always refer to it as the person records icon. So I wanted to make sure that you understood what I was referring to. So let me show you this in the system. So I'm going to log in. Now we are going to, if it hasn't already been sent out, send you a packet that's got the login information, your person assignment, that sort of thing. So you don't need to worry about remembering this right now. But I'm typing in service authorization, because again, we aligned this with the name of our courses. The password is password 123 with the pound sign, or I'm dating myself by calling it a pound sign. It's also, many know it as the hashtag. And log in. Here is my acknowledgement that I am an authorized user. And I have already been in the system, so I didn't need to select my organization and location and who I was logging in as. But actually, I think what I want to do right now is log out. And I'm going to log back in because to see if I can get that for you. I knew that one. Okay, there's my acknowledgement screen. Okay, it took me directly in because I'd already been logged in under the service authorization username in order to test things before I started the class. This is my dashboard. So this is literally my, as a staff member, dashboard. You can see all of the different tiles here. There is the, of course, navigation header, as I mentioned. And on the Evergreen logo, you can see my pointer arrow turns into a pointer finger, meaning I can click on this and it's going to bring me right back here. All of these other items in the navigation header, these are in your micro learning, so I'm not really going to spend a lot of time on these. I do want to show you how to search for your person that you might be assigned, and then I'll search for the person I'm going to work with for at least part of our session. So I have my drop down where I have to select my category. I'm going to ignore that for now. There's the quick type field for the quick search. This backwards refresh button is pretty cool because it's history. And you can see I did a lot of searches for someone named Ann and then one for someone named Jones. And this is where if you're going into somebody repeatedly and you've done a search, you can go to this history and then just click on the person. I'm coming over here to the advanced search, the magnifying glass with the plus sign in it. So when I click on that, here I can use all sorts of different information to search from. Well, for me, I'm going to do service authorization. And I'm going to search for person 5. And when I click search, I happen to get only one result. So it's possible you may get multiple results and have to select one of the options. It's possible you may only get one result. And you would click on this to access the person record. For me, I'm going to come up here and I'm going to search for Ruby Jones. So I input her name, I pressed enter. I'm going to click to open up her record. And here you can see I'm in Ruby's record. I know this because her name is in this top ribbon or banner. This person ID number, this is assigned by Evergreen, so it's not something that can ever be changed. We have this defaults to the person dashboard with the various tiles here. We have the person summary, which is information that's been collected from other areas of the record and combined here for just a quick view. There is the person record with the demographic information. In a lot of screens, you're going to see this toggle over on the right side. And I'm clicking on it so I can see the different sections and I can easily navigate through them. There's the health information, which is broken up into different tabs. History information, which is collected on each of your 8 domains. Progress notes, again, check out that micro-learning. Attachments and micro-learning. Assignments. I want to check this out. And a person has to be assigned to a location and a staff member in order to have a comprehensive assessment done and a PCP. So the location assignment, and Ruby didn't have this. So I'm going to add this right now. Okay, actually, let me take a I'm trying to log in as something else. I've been working in Ruby earlier, and not finding her was a little concerning. Okay, this is looking much better. The assignments. Here you can see the location assignment, and Ruby for a location is assigned to the case management Baxter Foundation. There's also staff assignments here. I don't have my staff assignment. So I'm going to come. That gives you an overview of the person record. So I want to come back to my PowerPoint because I want to move into the person-centered plan and the support implementation plan. So the PCP and the SIP. And you're familiar with the PCPs. And in Evergreen, it's closely aligned to what you have now, the one that's in EIS. The difference is there's an automated workflow and there's notifications. So there's no guessing if you need to take action. The system is going to tell you, and this is going to make a more seamless process for you. Now I'm going to give you a lot more background and information on the PCP and the SIP because I want to help you understand the overall workflow and how all of these different things fit together. So within the PCP, we know that there's waiver services requested by the planning team, and those are added to the PCP by the case manager. And once that's been completed, the case manager is going to set the PCP status to pending state review, which triggers a notification to the resource coordinator that the PCP is available for their review. That resource coordinator is going to open up the PCP, review the service and other key areas of the PCP, and update the status to pending provider review. Now, that's based on the assumption that everything looks good and you're putting your approval on it. Obviously, if things don't meet your approval, there's going to be a different selection for you. Now, once you've approved it or put this into the status of pending provider review, the case manager is going to get a notification. At that point, they're going to identify the provider who is going to be invited to submit a SIP. That provider is going to get a notification to let them know about that invitation. They are going to complete the SIP, which basically identifies their strategy to support the person and make sure that the person lives the best possible life. The provider updates the SIP when they're done with it. It goes back to the case manager. And guess what? The case manager gets a notification. So we've already gone through a couple steps, and with each step, as this PCP or SIP has gone from one person to the other, or one role to the other, there's been a notification. Well, once the case manager gets this back, they're going to discuss, the provider options with the person, select the provider. And once that's done, the case manager's going to move forward to complete the plan. Now, one of the cool things is that with Evergreen, when that PCP is set to plan complete, that prior authorization is automatically generated. Evergreen takes care of it for us. And throughout the system, there are tools that are there to help make your completing these forms and various actions easier. Like one of the things you'll see frequently is what we call ghost text. And in this picture up at the very top of the screen, you'll see it says add strength. And behind that, it's hard to tell, but this is very light, light gray text. And that text is their guidance to give you an idea of what type of information should be input. Now, that same information is available in the light bulb. That light bulb is to the right of the field name. When you click on that, it has the same information as the ghost text, because at some point you're going to start typing, that ghost text is going to go away. So here from the light bulb, you can get that reminder of what you need to input. There are messages throughout the system. Again, these are items to help you understand why something is required, or where you might find information, or what has to be done next. Please read these. It ideally should be automatic that we do that, but I found that as a society, there's lots of times there's things we don't read. So please do read these because they're there to help you out. I do want to call out in particular this pink notification, because this is an error message. And one of the things that I love about Evergreen is that if there is an error, first of all, it's going to tell me, it's not going to let me move forward until I have made the necessary fix. But not only am I told that there's an error, I am told what I need to correct. Think about some of those other applications you've been in. You've gone to fill in a field, a required field, you go to hit send. Well, in my Target purchase, I went to hit send and I got a notice something was missing. Did it tell me what? No. So I had to scroll up and down to find it. Well, Evergreen, there's no guessing. It's going to flat out tell you what needs to be corrected. And then in the person-centered plan, you'll see that there's person-centered thinking tools to assist the case manager within their conversation with the person. So up in this navigation header, this is where your notifications are. There's this little notification button. And when you open it up, you're going to see a list of the notifications. In this particular instance, well, for everyone, this red circle tells you how many unread notifications there are. Obviously, this staff member was not keeping up with it. You will never see that many because you will keep up on it. And once you click on this, it would take you right to the applicable document. The key thing is check your notifications. Now, once you've accessed the PCP, there is a toggle over here on the far left, and that has to be engaged or clicked on to enter the edit mode. And the reason for this is the PCP is like a piece of paper. It's an official form. And so we have to tell Evergreen when we want to make edits to it. Your focus is going to be in the My Life Planning section of the PCP. In particular, you're going to look at the services and supports, possibly change and waiver services, and then the state review. Because the state review is what you are completing when you have finished your review of the PCP. So here you can see there is that list of menu items. Down at the bottom is state review, and you can see we're in the PCP tab, because there's two tabs in the person-centered plan. We're in the PCP tab, and there is a section called State Review. And this is what you fill out when you've completed your review. Once your review is done, you are going to update the status to pending provider selection. Now, once you do that, this completion requirements box is going to show up. The reason that I'm calling this out to you is because before you update the status, this box is not here. So I don't want you to be surprised when you see it. Instead, hopefully you'll think, Lisa mentioned something about that. Because these completion requirements are now for the case manager. There is the service implementation plan. You've done your approval on the PCP. The provider is invited to submit a SIP. Well, once the provider is added, once their invitation is issued, they get a notification to say, hey, you've been invited to submit a SIP. They are going to come in and access this and complete the SIP. Each service has a different line item. And here they access the SIPs from their location record, from their location profile. And here you're seeing a SIP that's in progress. Now, providers only see the SIPs for their locations. They don't get to see any other locations' SIPs, okay? We maintain that privacy. Once they have created their SIP, they're going to turn around and update the status from in progress to pending review. That's telling Evergreen, this is done. It's time to move to the next step. The case manager, guess what they get? Yes, a notification. And so when they get that notification, they're going to talk with the person about what the provider said they would deliver in the way of services and supports and what the provider strategy would be. And the case manager is going to say, is this something you're interested in? Person's going to say, absolutely. And here's where the provider is actually selected. And then from here, that's SIP. We have to identify, because it was a plan under review. We can't leave it that way. So we identified that the plan is implemented, meaning this is the provider that the person selected. And then from here, the case manager is going to continue and complete the PCP. And before they update the status to plan complete, they will have checked their completion requirements. They then set the status to plan complete, and that automatically generates the prior authorization. So I want to move into the system and show you the person-centered plan. We're going to leave the prior authorization for later on. Back to Evergreen. Okay, I'm going to do my search because I want to remind you how to do yours. So I'm going to click on Advanced Search. My first name is Ruby Jones for my person, and I click Search. I'm going to click to enter her record. And I'm going to come down here to the Forms icon on the left navigation menu. And I'm going to click on that to open it up. Here is a list of all of the forms that have been completed for Ruby. And you can see that they're down at the bottom. Currently, there's only 4 forms. At some point, there's going to be a lot more. So the number viewed can be updated, so more can be viewed. There's a quick search here, so you can locate a certain form. There's another advanced search for forms. I want to point this icon out to the right of the form search. This is a form filter. And when you click on this, this shows all of the different forms that have been completed for the person. So you can click to get a list of just one particular type form. Our list is small, so I'm not going to worry about it. But I do want to show you, I'm going to start out with a PCP that's in pending planning team meeting. So it's not yet been updated to send it to you. And the reason I'm opening it in this status is because I think for seeing the PCP for the very first time, it's going to be a little easier for you to see what I'm referring to. I have my 2 tabs. I want to show you the SIP tab is blank. I'm going to engage the edit mode. And I want to click my toggle so I can see all of the different sections. While you're in training, we go in a very linear fashion. Start at the top and we work our way down. There's one exception you'll hear about in just a minute. In the real world, once you've gone live, you can click through this menu in any order that you would like. There is lots of flexibility in Evergreen. Now there are, notice, no completion requirements here. Information that Evergreen knows, it's automatically going to populate. So you don't have to retype. The case manager doesn't have to retype. There are required fields that have the red asterisks and the some people call it orange, some people call it yellow bar on the left side. These are required fields. They must be completed in order to move, in order to save the information on the screen. So I want to look at the top, and you can see in this PCP, there's the various menu selections. There are the primary topics, which are left justified, and then items underneath it are indented. Each section starts with a person-centered plan thinking tool specific to that section. So information is first collected about me being the person, their life today. Then we go into exploration and discovery and getting the life I want. This section is important because this is what the goals are generated from. And up here, there's health and wellness in this little bar. If I click on this, I can see the information that was input into the comprehensive assessment. So it's right here for me. I don't have to leave the PCP, go into the comprehensive assessment, look things up, go out of the comprehensive assessment and come right back into the PCP. It's here for me, and it's broken down by domain. There are 3 questions for each domain in this section. What's important to me, what I want to stay the same or maintain, and what I want to be different. And it's the what I want to stay the same and what I want to change that generates goals. Well, if you think about it, there are 8 domains, 2 questions that are required for each domain. So that is 16 goals. Well, we teach the case managers how to manage that because they're not going to necessarily want to work with their person for 16 goals. That can be unreasonable. So they've completed this. They then move into scheduling the meeting and doing that in Evergreen. And when they schedule the meeting, I love this. When they set the date and time, it automatically shows in appointments and on the dashboard on the calendar. So again, that's not relevant to you, but I mention it because it's an illustration of the sophistication of the system. There's then allies and supporters, vision for a good life. And then here we're in my life planning, which is where you're going to spend a lot of time. Now, I said that for the most part, we start at the top and work our way down. In this one particular section, we might go in a little bit different order. The case manager, first thing they are identifying are the services and supports. And remember, for just a moment now, I have on a case manager hat. The fact that there's a pencil icon and a trash can, my cursor is a pointer finger. That means I can edit this. So I click to open it up. And here I entered the natural community / natural resources, and I filled this in. Now, the type of service or support always has different questions depending on what it is. And so this has been fully completed. On some of the fields, there is this check mark. Well, that started out as an exclamation mark, meaning that field's required for the PCP. Once it's answered, it turns into a check mark. So here's the service and support. I'm going to cancel this because I don't want to make changes. Here we come to the waiver service. And when it comes to you for approval of the PCP, you're going to, when you open this up, the service, the provider is going to be blank. That's the way it's supposed to be per your workflow. The service is going to be identified, and by default, the rate, unit, amount, and type is automatically populated by Evergreen. There's then information that's been input by the case manager, the type of support needed, and a couple other questions. Down at the bottom, service implementation plan, provider invitations. This is not yet done. I'm going to cancel out of this. Then for the rest of these, working my way up, barriers, they're listed, the strengths, the needs. And again, I can click on any one of these to open it up. Now, one thing about the needs, every need must be associated with a goal. And every goal must have a need. Okay. So there's 2 directions that goes. Sometimes people have a hard time with that because essentially, if I have 5 goals, all 5 of my goals have to have a need associated with it. Okay. If I happen to have 6 needs, all 6 of those needs have to be associated by a goal, with a goal. So when there's multiple items, I've seen people struggle with that when they're first learning the system. And I mention that just in case you happen to hear about it. With the need, the case manager has gone in. They need to identify if this is a resource need and the status, whether it's met or unmet. And there is a little light bulb that tells them about what met means. So there's no guessing for them. And I'm going to cancel out of that. Goal review, going to hold off on that. That's done by the person, the case manager with the person. My goals, this is going to be something you're really interested in. So I mentioned there were these 16 goals that are automatically populated. Well, to get the number down, the case manager is going to delete some of the goals. When they click on this trash can and scroll down, they happen to see a message, "Are you sure you want to remove this record?" And they click continue and it's removed. Now, again, you're not going to be removing these. However, there may be other places in the system where you are deleting something. So I want you to see how delete works. The other thing is, if there is a trash can and you click it a second time, you basically negated the request to delete. So it goes away. I'm going to open this goal up because, again, I think it's easier to see it the first time in this format. And so this has been filled out by the case manager. They've identified the domain. They've clicked to identify from the available column what they want to move over. It engaged the caret, the right pointing arrow, which moved the item over. They did the same for strengths and moved over strengths as well as barriers. All of these came from the comprehensive assessment, were populated into the appropriate area on this right menu. And then in the goals is where it's all being put together. My needs, again, we said every goal has to have a need. And then there's the services and supports that's identified. What service or support applies to this particular goal? So that's identified up here. We then input milestones. And down at the bottom, I have to again identify the service or support that applies. And for me at first, I was like, Lisa, I'm repeating this. Why do I need to repeat this? Well, what I realized is that you can see that there's this little box that encompasses the milestone. With this service and support, the case manager is selecting the service and support that applies to this particular milestone. And then they have the status and they can click cancel. So I've given you that overview of the PCP. So at this point, as a case manager, I'm going to update this and submit it for state review. And I'm going to say continue, so it goes to you. This is now in a status of pending state review. You get the notification. You're going to open up the PCP because you'll look there and then click on the notification. Don't forget, you have to enable your edit mode in order to be able to make an edit. I want to open up that right toggle so I can see the different sections. And down here on this right menu, there's the section for state review. And so you're going to do your whole review and you're going to turn around and say, yes, this looks good. Now, I'm going to show you something for just a moment because I'm pretty sure this is going to happen with you. My life planning, I want to scroll down here. Here's my waiver service. Okay, state review. I found your section finally by scrolling down. You can't tell, but I'm clicking here. I've done my review. I want to put in my approval. I can't do it. In that instance, And I can just about guarantee this is going to happen just because it still happens to me and I've been using the system a year. I want you to take a deep breath, sit back, and read your screen. And the answer is going to come to you that you have to engage this edit mode, which makes things available to you. And see, now I have my cursor as a pointer finger. If you have to, get up, walk down the hall for a minute and come back and again, read the screen because it gets, I don't know, blood flowing in the brain or whatever, but it works. The answer will come to you. So I'm going to update this and say, yes, I'm going to approve this. I could also say no, but I'm going to approve it. And the date defaults because Evergreen knows today's date. And I'm going to click save on this, save and next, because I wanted to go to the next screen. But once I've done my review, here is where I update the status to submit for provider selection. The updated status tells Evergreen I'm all done with my review. And then I click continue. And now you can see there the completion requirements. Okay. Now, the case manager got their notification back. I want to briefly show you what they do and how they get, how the SIP is managed. Case manager got their notification. They're coming back down to services and supports because now that you've provided your okay to this, it's time to start identifying a provider. So the case manager then opens up the service and they identify down at the bottom the provider that they're going to invite to provide services or to submit a SIP, I should say. Oh, who's my provider? And that provider gets linked and it gets saved. At this point, a notification goes to the provider. You hearing a theme yet? And the provider, when they open this up, they're going to click on the SIP. There's the service line item. They're going to click to open it up, and they have information about the goal and other information to help them identify the strategy that they will use to provide services and supports and help the person live their best possible life. They complete the service implementation plan details, identifying exactly what they want to do. And when they have that done, they update the status. At that point, the case manager gets, yes, a notification. They're going to update the waiver service to identify the actual provider, and then they're going to go on with completing their PCP. So I know I gave you a lot of information, more information than I would in other circumstances. It's because the system is brand new. I wanted you to have a little bit of an understanding of what happens before something gets to you, what you do with it, and then what happens right afterwards. So, Leslie, I know that I covered a lot of information on the SIP, much of which these folks don't do. Is there anything that you would like to add or put a context to?
No, I think you did a fabulous job, Lisa, of giving kind of the important background that they'll need as far as what happens on the case manager side, and then submission for the state review portion. I am aware that not all plans will require a state review. If there's no waiver services, there won't need to be a state review. That said, we actually do need to pace the person-centered plan all the way through all of the statuses. So the case manager will still need to submit for state review, even if there are no waiver services. And I'm working with business to determine how that will all work specifically. So we'll share some of that information at the business process training in January. But for those with waiver services, this is exactly how it would work. You would review the plan, and then go ahead and submit it back to them for the provider selection and the service implementation planning portion of the person-centered planning process.
Awesome. Thank you. And for what you just said, a light bulb went off for me. So thank you for that.
You bet.
Okay, we're going to move into the classification and reclassification packets. And again, I'm kind of chuckling at myself because the packets, for whatever reason, I find these to be fun forms. The packet, it bundles things together for you to make a review easier than ever before. So it's basically a checklist of forms that have to be reviewed. And the classification packet is used to determine waiver program eligibility, the classification, and the acceptance of or enrollment into the waiver program. The packet makes things really easy for review and decision making. You don't need to go in multiple places to look for things. Open forms, close them back up. It's all in one place for you. And once this classification packet is approved, the information flows to MIMS automatically. And MIMS sends back their response through a feed, and the information is added to the packet. So queries help you identify when classification packets need review or approval. Okay, it's the queries you're going to go to, and I'm going to show you how to pull one of those. And you're going to review the packet. And just like with the PCP, when you get done with your review, you are going to update the status. And you will have the option of classify, request clarification, or close. One thing on Evergreen, close means it's the equivalent of a big red void stamp. It's tearing the form in half. You still have it for paper trail, but you cannot take any action on the form. This cannot be undone. It has to be redone. And so you want to be really careful with that close button. It does not work like Word or Excel where you can close the form or the spreadsheet, open it back up, and start working on it again. This is a big red void stamp. And should you select classify, then you're going to identify the classification. Now, once this is classified, the DD waiver manager receives a notification. And Leslie, I'm going to ask you for clarification in just a moment because my notes say the DD waiver manager receives the notification and they enter the classification into MIMS.
Yeah, it's the resource coordinator that will receive it, and then they will manually enter that classification data into the MIMS system. Yep.
Okay. So when I do this and I'm showing people, if you wouldn't mind typing in just when that will occur. Because there's something, and the reason for my confusion, just for those that on the call, there's things that automatically flow into MIMS that don't require that it be manually input. So here is the reclassification information. So this reclassification means future, of course. Now this is for a main care section 18 in the screen. And of course, there are other waivers. If you have to do a reclassification, you'll receive a notification. So the system. And I have a new person that I'm going to be working with this time. And so I'm going to do a search. Actually, I'm going to use my history because the person I'm going to use is going to be Anne Shirley. So I clicked on that, and now I can just open up her record. And I'm coming again on this left navigation menu to Forms. And you can see the list of forms here. Now, I had just said that there'd be notifications sent to you and queries could be used. I'm going to show you those in just a moment. For our purposes, I want to show you how the classification packet is completed by the case manager. And we're giving you a little bit more knowledge so you have a context. So here, there's the Add New form that they've clicked on. They need to identify the category of the form, and that category limits the available forms. Evergreen is not going to let them select something that doesn't make sense. So they're going to do the classification, reclassification packet, and click Next. They need to identify the program and then the type. And I'm going to select the initial classification. Things that are non-standard are when the person wants to keep their case manager from their children's services or behavioral health. So I'm going to just click Initial Classification and then click Save. This opens up the form. There's a place here for attachments. There's the status, which they're going to complete it and they'll submit it. Remember, if they close it, it's that void stamp. They have completion requirements that tells them the forms that have to be added. And then there's the expand all, which you can use as well to see the form in one long list. And then there's the toggle. Evergreen knows this information. It was already collected, so it's starting that part of the form. The forms checklist. These are the forms that the case manager has to add to the system. They aren't added. I know that because even though they're listed, all of these other status fields are blank. So on this ellipsis, they're going to click on it and see the link button. This would give me a list of all of the comprehensive assessments. I want the one that's completed and active. There is, and I know that you're not completing these forms, but there may be other instances you want to see another column. This little table icon, if I click on this and then click column select, it shows me all the different columns that are currently displayed. I can uncheck things so they won't be displayed, or in this instance, I'm going to check active so it is displayed. It's an illustration of how you can do some customizing on what you want to see when. And so I'm going to click back to close that. I have a cancel button. That's it. If I click my ellipsis, archive and remove, that won't be options for them. I have to click to highlight this because when I clicked on it, I've told Evergreen, this is the form I want to take action on. And that got me the link button. And I attach that and it's now displayed here. I'm going to do the same thing with the HCBS choice. Ellipsis, click link. I only have one thing that's submitted. I'm going to click on it to highlight it. And that gave me my link button. And again, if I go to my checklist, here it is. And lastly, my person-centered plan. clicking on the ellipsis to get the link button. Here I have a number of person-centered plans. So I'm going to go to my table icon again and column select and active. So I can see for sure which one is active. And here I'm going to click on the plan and then click on link. So all of my forms are here. And as the case manager, then I'm going to update the status to submit this to you. And I have to add a comment. All right, so the status is pending review. You get a notification. And so with that, you can click to either open the classification packet. And let's say you did that, you're here now. You see the initial information. You have the forms checklist. This is cool. I'm going to click on the comprehensive assessment. It opened it up for me. So you can easily see and look through the entire comprehensive assessment. There's the status that it's completed. You can see that the completion requirements were met, and you can review this as you would like. There is that right toggle. Don't forget about that, so you can see and easily navigate between the different sections. Okay, this looked good. So I want to click my back button. And I'm back to my classification reclassification packet. And so the forms checklist again. This time, I want to review the person-centered plan. I'm going to click on it to open it up. And here it is. And I have all of the information that's here. My toggle for that right-hand menu. And then also there is the SIP information that's available. So it's all right here for me to review. And again, all I'm doing is clicking the back button. One little click. Well, actually two. Because I went into that SIP tab, I added a click. And then there's the forms checklist. And lastly, I can take a look at the HCBS choice. It works the same way. I clicked, it opened the form for me so that I can review whatever I would like. When I'm done with my review, I click the back button. I'm back in the classification, reclassification packet. And since I'm all done, my review looks good. Oops, I should have started the review first. And I'm going to click continue. And you would still go through the process I just showed you. I have to tell the system I've started my review and that it's under review before I can update my status, okay? So again, if you see that it has start review and you've already done your review, that's okay. Just update the status to under review so that you can do your classification. So there's the classify, which I'll come back to in a minute. There is request clarification. I would type a note in here. This would go back to the case manager. They get a notification. They would make the necessary updates, resubmit things as appropriate and whenever within the workflow. And you would then get a notification again when it's ready for a review. And I do not want to do that. This all looks good. So we are going to classify this, and we just need to identify the date. And we're going to click save on here. You can add comments if you'd like. So the DD waiver manager is then going to get a notification, and they in turn are going to enter the classification into MIMS. Now then, I've been telling you about the queries. So queries are up in this navigation header. And when I click on this, it defaults to my caseload. Well, over on the far right, there's that filter icon for the queries. And I'm going to scroll down until I find the classification reclassification packet. And I click on that to open it up. I can provide very narrow results if I only want to see things for a person. I can filter by program and select multiple or a single one. I think I'm going to do multiple here. I could do it by type if I wanted to, and certainly by status. I'm going to keep things simple, and then I'm going to click Run Query. And this gives me all of the results. I can see on here there are 39 of these classification reclassification packets. At some point, there's going to be a lot more than that. And so there is this export button. So the results can be exported. They have to be saved somewhere. And for me, I always put the date by them or for them. That's my little thing. And I save it. Up here, I'm in Chrome. Chrome is the recommended browser. In Chrome, I have this little down pointing arrow. And when I run my mouse over it, it says downloads. If I click on here, it's opening the spreadsheet for me. Let me move this over so you can see it. And all the columns are the same size. They're big up in the corner, where there's that diagonal triangle. I put my cursor in there and click. So this highlights everything. And if I move a column, that's going to make all the columns the same width. And then if there's things that I want to make particular columns make a little wider, I can do so. Okay. So here, this is available and you can see what it looks like. So I'm going to close that up. Okay, we have a prior authorization that comes next. And some feedback from you all, and you'd have to use the Q&A for this, is on our agenda, and Leslie, you really need to weigh in too. Our remaining topics are the prior authorization, and then we move into next steps and what you are going to do to prepare for the go live date. So we can take a 5 or 10 minute break if you'd like, or we can continue moving forward.
I'm fine to keep going if others are. I know they can't chime in verbally, but if you guys want to pop into the Q&A, if you're good to keep going.
And I'll give 10 more seconds if you have an opinion. Otherwise, then I'm just going to start. Okay, thank you, Crystal. It's one of those things that with so little to do, I don't want to give you a break and then have you say, why did she give us a break right now? We could have just kept going. And by the same token, I don't want you saying, oh, I needed a break before we got to this point. So thank you for that. And I'm going to click because I want to go back to my PowerPoint here. And we are now going to talk about the prior authorizations. I mentioned these earlier. You are going to love these in Evergreen. It's going to make your approval process so easy. So with the prior authorization, this review process ensures that the services and supports meet the criteria for payment. And again, just how we got here, the PCP was started. Once services and supports were added, this came to you for review. You approved the PCP, thought it looked great. The case manager engaged the provider to submit a SIP. The provider was selected. The case manager completed the PCP when they set the status of that PCP to plan complete. That generated the prior authorization. Now, each prior authorization is for a different service, so you will never see two services on a provider authorization. And also, each provider has their own prior authorization. Too many P words there for me. So we're talking about the prior authorization. There will never be two providers on the same prior authorization. So you're going to review this prior authorization and you're going to update the status, ideally to approve it. The information then goes into MIMS, and MIMS, once they approve it, the services can then be delivered. And you're going to know it's approved because that flows into the prior authorization from MIMS. So here's what the form looks like. And I know that this looks very little right now. You are going to see it in the system, so hang in there with me. But up at the top, there is the overview, and this is the service information. The next column, or row rather, is the provider information, and this came from their provider record. This third row is the original request. What was requested for the service and support? And then lastly, there's the service information. And this is information about the service, including the status and the MIMS status. This is the section you're focusing on for your review. When it comes to the prior authorization, there are single and expanded prior authorizations. With the single, it means there's one service line and all of the services have to be provided with that given time frame, that time identified on that service line. And you can see here, there's the frequency requested. The frequency is the period, who it's authorized, and then the various approvals. Now, just to give you a heads up, in the sandbox, things are going to look a little more sparse because we're not connected to a lot of things. We can't be, and we shouldn't be. The expanded prior authorization. This is where the service has been broken into two service lines, each one for 6 months. So there's services claimed in the first 6 months, and then the remainder of the services claimed in the following 6 months. And again, it's got the same information. Within the service line, I don't know if you noticed, but there was this little caret here, this little right pointing arrow. It's very subtle. But when you click that, that's going to open up the service details screen. And you access this, and this is where you're going to input your approval. The service information is auto-populated based on the service details entered into the PCP. You'll see you can't edit that. The authorization information has 3 different sections that are completed. There's an authorization information, requested service, and authorized service. So you'll see those sections in just a moment. And then the decision information is what is your actual decision, and your information is input. Once you're done, this goes to MIMS, and MIMS will, of course, do their review and send back their approval. Now, the MIMS response, they're either going to provide an approval or they will provide error information. Once MIMS has approved this, then the provider can start offering services. Now, every once in a while, I'm asked by a case manager or provider, can we start delivering services before the prior authorization is fully approved? And the answer to that is no. Have to have the prior authorization fully completed and approved. And one of the things that happens after it's approved, after the provider offers a service, they're going to submit their claim. Well, utilization is tracked. So that's pretty cool. There should never be a question of where a person is in their utilization of services. Now, there are errors that are based on MIMS criteria. And so there's errors and warnings. Errors indicate something is wrong that has to be fixed. They're a hard stop. You can't move forward. Warnings are messages that let you know that there's conditions that haven't been met, and you can make changes, and you can still move forward with the prior authorization if you want. The warning is the essential proceed with caution message. And so you want to make sure that everything is aligned before you do move forward. Now, the errors are based on MIMS provider and member enrollment, and they help prevent submission to MIMS. There's times that the MIMS records has to be updated before the prior authorization can be resubmitted to MIMS. So within this prior authorization, the form's been generated, you're reviewing it, you can request clarification if you would like to do so. Again, it's going to send this back to the case manager. They'll get a notification, they'll take a look at that and respond accordingly. And then they'll resubmit things. For you all, after this decision is input, after your decision is input, the service line information is entered into MIMS. This happens and it gets fed to MIMS each night. And then there's a feedback from MIMS with the response that goes into the prior authorization. So let's take a look at this in the system. And I'm going to go back to Anne Shirley. And I'm clicking to open her record. I've come down to the forms icon, and there's my prior authorization. So I'm clicking to open it. And here you can see it's in progress. Here's my overview section. Now, again, it's in progress. You know, you're reviewing something. So should you look at that and say, wait a minute, I can't make any changes to this. What's going on? Again, sit back, take that deep breath, read your screen, scroll through the whole form, look at all the different sections, and then you'll come down to the service line. You'll see this little caret. Read things carefully. You see this little caret and you'll end up clicking on it. Okay? So, but back to the top. Here is the overview information. In the training environment, information is sparse because there's limitations on the feeds back and forth. And training environment equals sandbox. I used training environment terminology for a long time, and I'm making that switch. In the sandbox, there's not as many different connections as there will be upon go live, and there shouldn't be. The training environment is, or excuse me, the sandbox is a really contained environment. There is the provider information that's here, the original request, and then the service line. And this happens to be that expanded service line. Well, I'm going to click on this caret because it's going to help me go deeper. to the service details. And this, it says it's pending review. That's your review as a resource coordinator. And you know you can take action on it because there's that submit. You have completion requirements here to help you out to make sure you do everything you're supposed to do. And when I click on this little plus button, it tells me what section. There's then the expand all, so you can see things in a long row, and the toggle, so you can navigate through the different sections. For us, starting at the top, there is the service information. You can see the authorization information here, including the requested and authorized services. And there's that pencil icon, and my cursor pointer is a finger. The arrow is a finger indicating I can click and open this up, and I can edit the authorized service accordingly. And if I open this up and I select and start filling in part of this, I have to fill in all of the fields. So if I open this up, if I start filling this in, I have to continue. I can also choose not to. There is decision information, and this is where you're going to enter your information. In that lower right corner, there's the add decision information. Here, again, the required field, the asterisk. I can approve, request the clarification, or deny this. If I request the clarification, then I'm going to have an opportunity to add comments. So again, it goes back to the case manager. I'm actually going to approve this. Is there an additional review needed? I can say yes or no. If I click yes, I can just click save. If I click no, again, it's just an indicator. I'm going to click no. And then there's the MIMS response. So this information goes to MIMS. MIMS is going to check everything out, and it's going to come back with a response. And that's where you get the response in here. Now, Sandbox is not connected to MIMS, nor should it be. So in the Sandbox, this will never be filled in. There's the utilization. So once this is all approved, the provider is notified, they start delivering services. They're going to submit their claims using their current process. When that claim is processed by MIMS and paid, at that point, MIMS feeds this utilization into Evergreen, and it's tracked here. So again, somebody can always see where things are as far as utilization goes. So before I go into next steps, Leslie, I wanted to see if there was anything you wanted to add about the classification or reclassification packet or the prior authorization.
Once again, I think you did a fabulous job of giving the technical overview here, Lisa. As I'm sure the folks that are on the training notice, we do have visibility into a lot more information, which is awesome. It's too bad you can't see it in the Sandbox environment while you're testing around. But again, to Lisa's point, we should not be connected with that live MIMS system. So you won't get to see that in action until we're in production. But very exciting that we'll be able to see the response from MIMS, that you'll also get notified if a prior authorization is not able to be processed by MIMS, so that you can try to work to remedy that, and that you can see the utilization information here. The only other thing that I would share is, again, we will have a deeper dive business process session around prior authorizations in January. Definitely get registered for that, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of the nuances of this form and the data and the process and that kind of stuff. But really excited to be able to have more of this information available for you to view.
Thank you. And thank you, Leslie. I appreciate that. I always want to check in with you on the off chance I have misstated something. Better to do that than to let it go.
Doing a great job.
Thank you. All right, we're moving into our next steps. So if you haven't received it, you are going to be receiving information about logging into the sandbox. There's a packet that's going to give you all the steps to do it, and ODES is going to be assigning your person to you. Again, be sure to click and stay with your person. Don't use anybody else's because you will mess them up. There's like 2,700 people or something like that working in the system, and all 2,700 people have persons with very similar names. And so we really want people to stay in their lane. Now, the other thing is, and you might roll your eyes at this, and that's quite all right with me. I have found, even though we're adults, and I ideally shouldn't have to say it, I have found if I don't, something inevitably happens. Please keep whatever you input into the training environment professional. Please keep it clean. I have found that whenever I don't say that, I kind of am poking around in there, and I will find something in that sandbox. Again, changing my terminology here. I will find something in the sandbox that's inappropriate that I need to go in and change. So please just keep it clean. A reminder, you won't have things like notifications because it creates too much chaos in a training or a sandbox. But there's lots of other things you can check out. And my last thing about the sandbox is you have a lot more access than you will have upon go live, because we had to do that so everybody could do all of the different steps they needed to do. Because if you listen, there's things that go from you to the case manager, back to you, and we just needed everybody to be able to do everything. Upon go live, you're going to have access to what you need to do your job. So don't worry if you don't see a button that you see in the sandbox. That's cool. That's the way it's supposed to be. You're going to watch for your emails and watch those micro learnings. Within the system, it's time to start planning ahead. You want to tie up any loose items that you can, finalize and finish anything in progress. At 5 p.m. on the 12th, at that point, you're no longer going to be able to work in the system. And Leslie is going to clarify in just a moment, because there's one system you can still work in. Next week, we start the holiday week. And so you really might want to start your planning now, so you at least have that strategy ready and you're able to hit the new year running. Tools for you. There are Q&A sessions that are coming. Some of these are Q&A specific to Evergreen. Some of these are the training sessions, the business process sessions that Leslie has mentioned. There are FAQs and recordings available in the training environment. And that's the project website. Now, Jack she's on the ball with things. And in the chat, she has put the link to the FAQs. There's a survey link I'm going to have you click on in 30 seconds, probably closer to 15. There's then the email address for you to email questions, and the link to the micro learnings. So all of that is available for you. Now, another action for you to complete on that link that Jack put out there for you. That says survey. Click on that right now, okay? because we want your feedback. We want to know what you liked and we should keep doing. You may have suggestions for how we do things a little differently. We look at these and we take into account what people tell us. Now, there is a rating scale on here. On one side, it's strongly agree. On another side, it's strongly disagree. Please make sure that you're reading that scale. Every once in a while, we get a survey back and everybody has checked strongly disagree on all the questions. That creates a lot of concern for us, understandably, because that means we're missing a mark. So while, so please go in and read that, because in those instances, when we start looking at the comments, we can see, oh, it's most likely an instance somebody did not read the scale correctly, mixed it up. So there's only a few questions. Please complete that. And I'm going to suggest that you keep completing that survey, but keep your ears open, because I'd like to invite Leslie to share any final thoughts you might have.
Thanks, Lisa. I just want to say thank you to those that joined up today. I know that technically the state offices were closed and you could be using your admin leave. So we appreciate your participation in today's session. This will obviously be recorded. This was obviously recorded as well. And so those that weren't here will be able to access the recording and watch it afterwards. And those business process sessions that I mentioned are on January 3rd. There are two identical sessions, one in the morning and one in the afternoon, just trying to give a little bit of a variety and timing with your days, with your other scheduled activities. So if you haven't already registered for one of those sessions on the 3rd, please go ahead and do that. And we'll dive in a little bit deeper on some of the business process topics and nuances. If you haven't already received your sandbox training access, which hopefully you did, I know you guys were some of our early testers as well, and you were in our UAT environment, but you should also be receiving access to the sandbox training environment. If you haven't received that already, apologies for the delay there because of the outages with internet and state office closures. It's taking a little bit longer, but we'll try to get those out to you just as soon as possible. And the only other thing that I will just say is, as it relates to you folks and wrapping things up in the system, progress notes, definitely get those completed. If you create progress notes in EIS, those will migrate in a completed state. Same thing with reportable events. If there's any reason that you would be entering reportable events, make sure that those are getting completed in EIS, because those will also migrate in a completed state into Evergreen. So you won't be able to edit them over in Evergreen. Other forms will be editable and you can complete those in the system. And as it relates to PAs specifically, we're actually going to be shutting off the PA functionality on Thursday, January 11th at 5 p.m. And that is because we do have a plan to end date all existing prior authorizations in EIS as of Thursday, January 11th. That will flow over into MIMS so that those can have an end date. And then we will be creating brand new PAs in Evergreen, and those will flow over into MIMS on cutover weekend. So we'll generate the spreadsheet after we end them. It will have the original PA end date and the remaining unused units on the new PA that gets created over in the Evergreen system during the cutover weekend. So we can have some more discussion about that during the business process sessions if you guys have any concerns or questions about that. But Betsy and Emily are aware of that process and plan. And again, thank you guys so much. Everybody stay safe, warm. Hopefully you guys get your power back. Looks like mine's not going to be back until maybe December 23rd. So I hope you guys either have power or get yours back sooner than I do.
Yeah. And I echo all of that. One thing I do just want to say on the recording, give us a couple days, because it takes Jack a day or two to process it. it takes a long time on these recordings, and we have quite a few of them. And then it takes Leslie, she has to put in a request to have it posted, and that takes a day or two. And I don't know if that might be delayed a little bit more because of what you're experiencing. But
Yeah,
again,
possibly. So
thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. Please take care of yourself and your family, and have a good
thank you so
holiday.
much, Lisa. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.